In Cold Blood is an American literacy treasure, one in which wore the author Capote down to his death. Capote gave all he had to write this book because he became infatuated with the true story behind his semi-fictional novel. I think this book took a huge toll on Capote because he invested every part of his being into this work. It was physically and mentally taxing to travel all the way to the small town where the murders happened. He spent years collecting remnants of the tragedy from many different sources. I really think that his relationship with the murderers themselves is what really drained him. He became close with the murderers while they waited their death penalty. People say that Capote empathized with them because his childhood was not so different from theirs. He thought that in an alternate world that he could have become one of the murderers himself. Writing about the gruesome killings was extremely difficult because he could see another version of himself in the role of the killers. I do not think current times would have made a difference in relation to the mental toll of writing this novel. To me, this investment that Capote committed to is similar to what method actors do often today for movies. The most obvious example of this would be Heath Ledger, who played the Joker in the Batman movie. People say that Ledger struggled to return to his normal self, similar to Capote's issues after writing this novel. His performance, Ledger's, was fantastic, but it took everything out of him, just like the novel did to Capote. When people invest everything into their art, they lose a part of their individuality. In other words, parts of their identities never return because it is trapped within their work. This is why it's important to be able to separate yourself from the art you are creating, especially when your story involves tragedies such as murder. Unfortunately, when artists like Capote do commit to a story, they create amazing works like in Cold Blood is. It's unfair that sometimes it takes a full investment to get the best out of people. But I think everyone would agree that it's better to not get the best work out of you if it means saving your life, You don't want to get so far invested in your work that you lose yourself and eventually die. But it's happening all the time, and it doesn't matter if it was back then or now. It's still happening now, just like it was happening with Capote. So I don't think the time period makes a difference here. As for your second question, to me, this book is firstly written because it's an intriguing story. Knowing who Capote was, he always intended to entertain and captivate his audience above all. He knew how alluring he could write about these murders. So he wrote about this because he knew how good he could write about it, is what I'm trying to say. Many pieces of literature are written for their story first, but end up being used for educational purposes because of the intricacy and high-level literacy that can be learned by reading it. So many authors probably know that their novels could be used in schools, but that is because of how talented the authors are, not because of their intentions for their work to be used in educational setting. Just because Capote may have written the novel for its story does not mean it cannot be used in a school setting. My evidence for this not being an educational piece lies within Capote's persona. It would be out of character for him to write a novel just for educational reasons. He was an entertainer and a good one at that. He thrived by captivating people's attention. He was at his best when he was the center of attention, is in other words. This does not mean Capote would not want his novel to be used in schools. He probably would encourage its use in schools because there's so much to learn from reading it. This novel is so important that it's kind of a travesty for it to ever be censored in schools. I think censorship is a contradiction in American society. We always preach our freedom of speech and press, but then ban books in schools. So it doesn't really make sense. Which one do we want to be as a society? One that censors books, or one that is open to all literature regardless of content? It confuses me because America can never decide which one it wants to be. And I personally am of the mindset that all literature is purposeful in some way, subtle or obvious. I would not ban a single book if it were up to me. And many philosophers preach this mindset because there is a lesson in every piece of art. In Cold Blood is written so well, which is reason enough for it to be used in schools. People can learn so much about writing by reading this novel. Banning the book, or any book, hampers our potential to be the best society we can be. If you do not like something, just do not interact with it, but also do not take it away from others who may actually find value in it. Just because it offends you does not mean it does not have value. It is small-minded to think otherwise. We should be a smarter and more open-minded society than that. And I think we're getting better at not censoring things, but we still have work to do. And it's kind of weird for us to preach this freedom mindset and still censor things and ban things. I really think we should choose one or the other, because that would clear up this confusion that I have, and I'm sure other people have. Do we want to be that society? It takes a big commitment to not ban things, and it would be changed from what we're used to. So it's an interesting thing to see how the future will turn out. I think we're trending in the right direction, but it takes one leader to revert back into censorship or the other way. So who knows?